I am literally gonna cry.
I'm so pissed off right now.
That was 15 minutes of content that didn't get recorded.
Oh my god. So we just recorded like half of the entire episode before we realized the microphone disconnected and nothing was saved.
And we are gonna cry. I'm literally gonna cry.
I am going to cry. Oh my goodness. We went over so much.
So much as in one topic, but one topic within other things. And like
it probably happened when we dropped the microphone.
Probably.
That makes sense.
I'm gonna cry.
Oh my goodness. We have been up here for an hour and for about an hour. We have been up here for like an hour. Getting things set up, recording, getting ready, getting articles gathered.
So then,
just for it to fail 1 minute in, and we didn't even realize.
And we were talking for 15 minutes, and we're now very upset with ourselves.
Talking to a microphone that's not working.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. If somebody saw us right now, they'd just be looking at us like, okay.
If someone was in the back seat, they would be very disappointed.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Okay, so, hi, welcome back to the Unsilenced.
Yeah.
So today we are going to be talking about a few topics.
Including the House GOP, so the Republicans, attacking the IRS, as in they want to abolish the IRS. Make sure that's good stuff.
We're good stuff.
We're good. Okay. And
Supreme Court considers fate of Biden's student loans relief plan. And then also, Utah bans TikTok.
Yep.
So
it's pretty juicy content that we lost 15 minutes of.
Luckily, it was all just the House GOP, but you know.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get into it.
Let's get started. We're gonna run through this really quick because
I'm pissed off.
Yeah. Okay. So House GOP keeps up attacking on the IRS with a bill to abolish the agency, and this is by CNN Politics, which we're going to state this again, even though we stated it 10 minutes ago. Neither of us are on either side of Democrat or Republican. We're in the middle, and we are not choosing. End of story.
Exactly. And if you are all upset because, it's CNN, it's not real news, both Fox News and CNN are agreeing on this topic.
Well, they're not agreeing, but we haven't looked into Fox yet. But they both have made articles on this issue. So we will get into it. Washington, CNN, the Republican-controlled House, has made the Internal Revenue Service a political target after Democrats bolstered the agency with new funding last year. With the first week of new Congress, dozens of GOP lawmakers introduced a bill that would abolish the IRS altogether and replace the entire federal tax code with national sales tax, which, if you don't know what national sales tax is, it's pretty much your $5 Starbucks drink is now going to cost $8 to $9.
Yeah, so basically what they're wanting to do is get rid of all your taxes and stuff for what you normally pay for taxes during tax season, right? And instead they want to impose a sales tax on everything, whereas everything you buy, you just get taxed right then and there. You don't have to do taxes during tax season. However, this is really bad because if you think about it, the only people this is going to help is the rich. The rich are going to benefit from this because when they go to pay tax, they already have stocks invested in the companies they're buying things from. They're going to get returns from this.
Who knows what freaking Congress has going on or the Senate has going on about their families invested in it, and there's so much issues.
But when the middle class or the lower class go to pay for something, we're going to be paying, instead of $5 for a Starbucks drink, we're going to be paying $8 for a Starbucks drink.
Which is ridiculous.
And we're just going to be losing money every single transaction.
And that will mean
there won't be a return. You won't get return.
And you won't get taxed at work for your work tax, meaning you won't get federal tax back, state tax back. You won't get anything back, which is an issue because taxes is what keeps the U.S. running, in my opinion. We need taxes for the U.S. to stay.
There was a guy who said that originally, so you know how it's the Constitution says, everybody gets life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When it was actually originally written, the guy, I think it was Benjamin Franklin who quoted it, he said, there are 3 things for certain in this life: life, liberty, and taxes. He didn't actually say pursuit of happiness. He said taxes.
Taxes.
And then the people were like, let's get rid of that one.
Let's not have that one in there. That one's kind of sketchy.
Sorry.
We're still recording, I promise.
I am.
We're so stressed now because I was 15 minutes of content, which
Yeah.
I guess this helps my dyslexia because that means I went in and read it already and now.
Yeah.
Anywho, separately, the House voted recently nearly $80 billion in federal funding for the agency that the Democrats approved last year, with many top Republicans repeating the misleading claim that the money will be used to hire 87,000 auditors.
So the Democrats, they're claiming that the money, the $80 billion that they're investing into the IRS, is going to allow us to have 87,000 auditors, which means more jobs, and we're going to be able to get our taxes in place, answer more questions. Like later down in the article, it says just only last year, only 13% of phone calls were actually answered by the IRS.
Which means if we got more auditors, there would be more phone calls getting answered, more people benefiting,
and tax returns would be getting on time.
Yeah.
And so this is much better because then we would have more jobs, money would be in place, we would actually understand the infrastructure in the U.S.
And if we close the IRS, millions of people who went to school
for taxes
will lose their job.
Accountants are going to be losing their jobs left and right. Everyone who works in the IRS is going to lose their jobs,
which
it's
is
not going to be good for the economy.
Then gonna make our already homeless population skyrocket majorly, and we cannot have that. Anyhow,
like one of the most
that was very loud.
I know. Sorry, I'm eating fruit. Well, I just finished my food.
Okay. Anywho, so instead of adding 87,000 new agents to weaponize the IRS agency, small business owners, and middle Americans, this bill will eliminate the need for the department entirely by simplifying the tax code with previous provisions that work for American people and encourage growth and innovation. And Rep. Earl Buddy Carter, a Republican from Georgia who introduced the Fair Tax Act earlier this month. This is not fair for anyone. This will absolutely ruin America.
Well, it's going to make the richer rich, and it's just going to make us more poor.
It's going to make the poor... This is legit why Robin Hood stole from the rich and gave to the poor.
So if you think about it, like, we're students in school, right? Like, we're college students, right?
Yeah.
And we already have so much to pay for.
Yeah.
We have tuition, housing, all of this. And now when we go to pay for food and stuff, our taxes are going to be so much higher.
Ramen noodle? We're not even going to be able to afford
ramen noodle. It's going to be like $10 for a case. No. Ramen noodles is now $16 for a case because of taxes. We won't even be able
to afford eating in
no
college.
Living would not be affordable.
And okay, here's another thing. We're going to state this again because we stated it earlier. I'm going to school for political science and psychology. That's what I'm going to major in and minor in and then get a major in. But majoring in political science and then minoring in psychology. He is personally majoring in
computer science.
Yeah, that.
Computer science.
So, like, we would be getting paid a fair amount from our jobs, but also, like, this would completely... Yeah.
Like, it would be so much harder for people to get college degrees, which means poverty is going to be much harder. Like, people who don't have jobs is going to be much higher. The economy is just going to go...
Yeah, and it's already going...
It's already going down. This is going to make us just go...
It's highly unlikely that either will become a law, given the Democrats still control the Senate. But the measuring highlights how American two major political parties have very different strategies when it comes to addressing the IRS, which has seen its budget shrink by more than 15% over the past decade, and has struggled to not only process returns on time, but also answering taxpayers' questions. Just 13% of phone calls were answered this last year.
So, basically restating what we said earlier, because we already hit right ahead.
Yeah. Democrats have taken a different approach, making funding the IRS a priority. The Inflation Reduction Act, which passed along a party lines last year, approved $80 billion for the IRS over 10 years. By using the money to crack down on the tax cheats, it's estimated that the agency could boost federal revenue by more than $124 billion over that time period, which will help the economy so much because we need the money, because if America goes into debt anymore,
we're gonna crash. So basically, if I've explaining this to people the last few days, is we have hit so much in debt and all that, and we have a debt ceiling, right? And it keeps getting raised higher and higher. The new House person in charge, DeSantis, he has now vowed to not raise the debt ceiling. However, this could be really bad and good, because if we don't figure out our debt problem by the time we have to pay up, we're gonna go. Our economy is just gonna go boom, worse than the recession in 2008.
Like stock market crash in 2008. It will be worse than that. It will be the only reason we survived in 2008 was because of drug dealers.
Like, it's been quoted that the only reason the world economy has survived in 2008 was because of drug trading.
But here's the thing. Also, it can damage us because we are what help other countries. Like, because other countries rely on us to help them. Mm-hmm. If we can't be there to help them, we're screwed.
Well, I do think that we need to focus on ourselves before we focus on them. But at the same time, like...
Well, if China gets ahead, and this could put them ahead.
China, we don't even know if China isn't ahead, like, right now. They could be ahead and we don't know it.
Are you finding the episode by the video?
Yeah, so there's a senator, Jeff Jackson from North Carolina. Oh, I think he's a senator. He might be a representative. He is amazing, guys. He is a Democrat. He, however, gives a very open view on what happens. He explains everything and all that. Him and his family, they don't invest into traditional stocks. They invest into stock accounts that invest into hundreds that he does not get to choose, and then it comes back. He in fact signed a bill that allows it so that families of the people in the government cannot buy stocks because of insider trading.
Yeah, and like, I'm going into Congress. Like, that's my goal, is to become part of Congress to help America, because America needs help. Let me tell you, we're struggling here. So, there's that.
Yeah.
What happens when you make a promise that you can't keep and the entire economy hangs in the balance? The biggest political fight of the year is going to be about the debt ceiling. We have about 6 months to reach an agreement on this until we default on our debt, which would cause a huge recession and probably a global financial crisis. Raising the debt ceiling is what we usually do. We did it 3 times in the last presidency. But remember that big speaker fight we had back in January when McCarthy was having a hard time finding the votes to become speaker? Well, one of the promises he made to the holdouts was that he wouldn't ask them to raise the debt ceiling until he gave them a budget that would balance over the next 10 years. He also said it won't involve raising taxes on anyone and won't involve any cuts to Medicare or Social Security, which are the 2 programs we spend the most money on. He hasn't quite said no cuts to defense, but do we think he's going to propose big cuts to defense? Probably not. So if that's your starting point and you can't touch any of that stuff, then to balance the budget, you would almost have to zero out the entire rest of the budget. Transportation, education, energy, science, environment, housing, border control, air traffic control, healthcare for 40 million children of low-income families. So here's where things stand. Speaker McCarthy needed some people in a very difficult moment, so he made them a promise that he won't be able to keep. And the question is, what happens then? Do those people flip out and blow this whole thing up and cause a default, which everyone agrees would be an economic disaster? Or can we sit down and figure this thing out in a way that is at least semi-realistic, preferably as soon as possible?
All right, okay. So I apologize. It's not DeSantis. I meant to say McCarthy.
Okay, so continuing. How would the Fair Tax Act work? The Republican Fair Tax Act is not ideal. It is not a new idea. A version was first introduced in Congress in 1999. It's never had enough support to become a law, but it puts forth an appealing message to those Americans who love to hate the federal tax agency. Which, why do you hate it? It legit benefits everyone.
I mean, there's a lot of pain, like, in that. Like, a lot of times you find out, oh, you owe taxes, and now you owe money. You aren't getting a return. You owe money. And a lot of people absolutely hate it. But, like, it's still what keeps America running.
I know. It would get rid of the complicated federal tax system, doing away with the annual task of filing tax returns. Instead, the bill would replace the federal tax on individuals and corporate income with a national 23 sales tax in 2025, allowing for adjustments to the rate in later years. Americans would pay Uncle Sam whenever they bought a new good or service for a personal consumption. The
Okay.
bill calls for abolishing the IRS and directing state to control the new federal tax, which is stupid and should not work that way.
So right now, if you were to buy a $5 Starbucks drink in where we live, we have a 6% tax. It would cost you $5.30. They want to add a 23% sale tax, which means that your Starbucks drink would now be $6.15. And they said that that rate can be adjusted. So imagine if they put it up to 30%. Now you're paying $6.50.
Yeah, it just should not work that way. Like, it really shouldn't. It should. We should keep
Or-
it.
Sorry, let's say you buy like a $400 phone, right? Now you're paying almost $500 for that phone.
Which, by the way, the new iPhones are like, what, $1,000?
Yeah.
But-
Samsung's. The new Samsung is only $400.
Okay, anyhow. Well, every consumer would pay the same tax at the cash register. The bill provides for a monthly tax rebate payment based on the
Poverty.
poverty rate and family size. It's meant to help offset the tax levy on low-income Americans who tend to spend higher shares of their paychecks on goods and services.
So
How
you
would that help them?
So you'd be spending a ton of money and you would get a little bit of it back, I guess. So you would have returns and they would be monthly. It's like getting a monthly paycheck, but it's smaller.
Yeah.
And it's only some of that tax money that you spent. And so this is really not
Not
good for
good.
people.
It's not good. And this is why it hasn't been passed yet, because it's like,
This is horrible.
there's also like, because it's like, it can't get passed because the Supreme Court has to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then also it has to get passed by.
Well, the Supreme Court doesn't have to go through it. The House has to go through it, the Senate has to go through it, and then the president has to sign on it. We all know that's not going to happen.
Thank the Lord for Biden. For once I'm saying that.
I know, right?
For once I'm saying that, you guys. Never will you hear me say that again.
Oh, boy.
That's going to become a meme. How simple is a national sales tax? A national sales tax appears very simple. One rate all Americans pay on new goods and services they buy. But some policies experts say the Fair Tax Act is more complicated than it looks.
So there's things they're hiding from you.
Whoa. You mean it's
Really?
the government?
It's the government? No,
Maybe
they
no.
wouldn't do that.
Why would the government hide things from us? Moving away from the tax income and towards taxing consumption is a step in the right direction for a pro-growth and simpler tax code, said Garrett Waston, a senior policy analyst at the Tax Foundation, an independent tax policy nonprofit. But there could still be complications. First, the tax rate would likely have to be higher than 23% in order for the federal
Told you.
government to pull in the same amount of tax revenue that it does now. One estimator found that the tax rate of about 30% would be more likely to be able to generate the same amount of revenue, or 44%
44%?
if measured
Oh.
the way
The way states.
state sales tax are typically presented.
44%. Okay,
Okay,
$5
y'all know-
Starbucks drink plus 44%. That's a $7.20 Starbucks drink.
Okay, that would be about the same price for eggs. Now,
Oh my goodness.
$7 eggs. That's ridiculous, you guys.
Oh my
Why is this
goodness.
going through?
I'm glad that this is not gonna
Second,
get passed.
nationwide sales tax could leave low and middle income people worse off. The current tax system is progressive, meaning it takes a large percent of income from higher earners than low income groups. Even with the monthly tax rebate, a national sales tax would still be less progressive.
So basically, right now, those who get paid a lot have higher taxes. Those who don't get paid a lot have lower taxes. I've seen this myself with raises. Like,
Yeah.
my taxes used to be real low, and now they've gotten higher over the years because I've gotten raises.
A 2011 independent analyst of similar national sales tax found that on average, most income groups would pay more tax than they did under the federal tax system at the time, except the top 5% of earners who would see a tax cut. Additionally, it's hard to imagine that lawmakers would pass a bill that does not exclude some things from the sales tax, like healthcare costs. For example, the basic income tax is simple too, said Howard Glickman, a senior fellow at the Urban Booking Tax Policy Center. It's the deduction credits, and exclusions. Sorry, I'm struggling so bad. Like for retirement savings, charitable giving that make it complicated. Plus, America would likely have to file some paperwork to some tax collection editing in order to receive the rebate. Glockman said the administration cost may be less than it is now, but wouldn't be zero.
Okay, so basically, we'll probably end this article there, but basically what is going to happen is the IRS, it can't be completely gone because the U.S. still needs to find some way to find where that money is going. So it wouldn't be completely gone, so there's no way to completely abolish it. And then it wouldn't help the low-income earners at all. It would make it so much worse for us. And then like things like charitable giving, such as like church donations or stuff, that would now like be all complicated. Retirement funds would be complicated, and they don't know how to do this without cutting out healthcare.
Yeah, and it's like,
we can't cut out healthcare.
Take me, for example. I just got in an accident this last October. Was in the hospital for 3.5 weeks. The ICU for the majority of the time had to get my spleen removed, had multiple internal injuries and internal bleeding, broke my entire leg almost.
You broke your entire body.
Yeah, it was all broken, and I am over $400,000 in medical debt, which thankfully for Medicaid and insurance and stuff, that's all gonna be paid off and gone. Thank the Lord.
I know. Like, that wouldn't be possible at this point because they would have to put cuts to your Medicaid. They would have to put cuts to your healthcare. They would have to put cuts to everything in order to make this work. How is this even like a viable idea?
The doctors, they would have to make cuts to those people who went to school for what they did.
Well, that can be discussed. Healthcare is so expensive. But,
yeah, it is.
Stuff like that. I think I can read this next one, please.
You want to read it? Are you sure?
Let's make sure this doesn't disconnect.
Maybe we should pause it.
All right, so I'm going to do this next article. This one's about the Supreme Court considers the fate of Biden's student loan relief plan. So as many of you guys know, Biden gave a relief plan to each students, like with students with loans. They get $10,000 taken off their loans now. I highly disagree with this because there are people who put in so much work to get scholarships, to get work, to pay off college, so they get college debt free. There are so people who do so much dang work. And then all these people who are like, oh, I'm just going to go get a loan, suddenly get $10,000. And those people who did all that work don't get anything.
I know, and it's like, what the crap?
Like, it's crazy. So the Supreme Court heard oral arguments Tuesday in two challenges to President Joe Biden's student debt relief plan, with several conservative justices appearing skeptical of the government's authority to discharge millions of dollars in federally held loans. If the conservatives do ultimately rule in favor of the policy changers, the hearing made clear that they would have to grapple with the legal questions about why states and individual borrowers should be allowed to sue over the program. Questions that emerged as a flashpoint during the argument. Millions of qualifying student loan borrowers could see up to $20,000 of their debt canceled, depending on the outcome of the arguments. How and when the justices rule will also determine when payments on federal student loans will resume, as a pandemic-related pause was put in place nearly 3 years ago. So basically, student loans were put on pause, like, you don't have to pay this off right now during the pandemic, which made sense. But now it has been 3 years.
Yeah.
And student loans need to get going again because the U.S. has debt to pay. But getting rid of $20,000 of the student's debt because of all of this now?
That's not helpful. That's going to pay America in more debt.
that's going to put America in more debt, and that's going to only help the people who were not wise in their decisions. No offense, people, but you know who you are.
I mean, and then there's me, who, like, I'll even admit it. I did not try in high school. I didn't try. And it's not that I didn't want to, but it's that I really didn't want to, because I was not hanging out with the best group. But I can't blame them for my actions. It wasn't them who made me choose not to do what
It's your job to take responsibility.
Yeah, it's my job to take responsibility for my actions, and I'm taking responsibility for my consequences, which is me probably getting a loan, at least my first year of college, while I worked my butt off
to pay it off.
Pay it off, and then also work my butt off to get good grades, so that way I could get scholarships the following year.
Exactly. And see, like, I'm all for financial aid in school, but not paying off student loans.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. So, in Biden versus Nebraska, a group of Republican-led states argued that the administration exceeded its authority by using pandemic as a pretext to mask the true goal of fulfilling a campaign promise to erase student loan debt. So, Biden, when he was in his campaign, said, I'm going to erase student loan debt.
But can't do that.
But then doesn't have authority, so he's like, I'm going to blame it on COVID. Yeah. So, the second case is the Department of Education versus Brown, which was initially brought out by two individuals who did not qualify for the program and argue the government failed to follow proper rulemaking process when putting it in place. Here are some key takeaways from the arguments. Conservatives see this case as another chance to rein in aggressive actions by Biden. And the questions the conservative justices posed, they signaled that the GOP states case as presenting the court with another chance to draw the lines around when the executive branch can and cannot act without Congress. So they're being like, there are some things you can do with Congress and some things there aren't. We need to make sure there's a line. We don't know if the president can just be allowed to give debt forgiveness.
Yeah, it's
that
like,
might have to go through
Congress. Like, Congress might have to be like, let us take a look at that. That doesn't seem right. I think that's against the law. I don't think that should be a law here, you guys. We need to fix that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna move on real fast because we don't have much time. So, and then another point was lawyer for GOP state gets grilled on standing. Whether the GOP states are threatened by the type of harm that makes it appropriate for a court to intervene with a major theme, Nebraska Solicitor General James Campbell received a series of questions from justices on both sides of the ideology spectrum about whether the states had overcome this procedure threshold, which is known as standing. A particular flashpoint in the hearing was the state's argument that the loan forgiveness program's potential harms to the Missouri MOHELA, the Missouri created entity that serviced loans for the state, gives Missouri standing. Several justices noted that MOHELA could have filed its own lawsuit challenging the program, but has not. So basically what happened was he's like, there are companies that give out loans, right? There are states that give out loans, and these are companies that rely on these loans being paid back. You can't just suddenly forgive all of this.
Yeah, it's like, there's, like, banking.
Mm-hmm.
They gave out those student loans because they expected their money back.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just give out money and not get money back. That would be like, hey there, bud, can I borrow $75,000?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I'm never paying it back.
Oh. Well, then no.
So,
it makes sense why they're going to file lawsuits. Like, duh. So then another... That's just a bunch of things. I'm not going to read more takeaways just because we don't have a whole ton of time, but it's a huge problem that's going on, and it is creating this thing, this divide in government right now as well, which, honestly, figure it out and then talk about the divide.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyways, but, like, it's creating a divide that's like, where does the president's power stop?
And here's the thing. This is why Congress and the Senate and everything exists. And so that the president isn't overpowered, and that way Congress isn't overpowered, and no branch is overpowered. Exactly. Because if a branch gets overpowered, we're to say the least.
Yeah, things are like all screwed up. I mean,
at that point, we are living in a very, 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 bad country where it's one party, one place rules all, which is also democracy, right? Right. No, we're in democracy.
We're not in. It's a dictatorship.
That's
But hey everyone, we ran into more technical difficulties. Anyways, that's going to be it for today's episode. Thanks for listening with us today, and we will see you on the next episode on Thursday.